What's good, kiddos? Welcome to the Speculation series. We have a question here from Joel Orocho, which I'm separating out into its own video because it's some top-level storytelling, writing level theorizing here, right after my own heart. They ask, given the current progression of philosophies and psychological topics so far, where do you think we will end up? Similar to JJK, Warframe seems to pit philosophical frameworks against each other in the forms of characters. If this is the case, what is the end-all for Warframe's philosophy? Personal opinion, I'm an absurdist, so my prediction is a battle between the infestation, existentialism, and the void nihilism, and us, a child of both. So yeah, very top level question here, and perhaps my answer is going to be a little bit dissatisfying for you. My main thing with the story of Warframe is that its core theme and the ideas that it's going to explore are not about any particular philosophical system. It's just the base idea of the relationships of families and how people feel about and relate to family. From your perspective of being an absurdist, where there is no meaning that is inherent in the universe and no act actually creates meaning, but we have to live as though we are creating meaning anyway, perhaps you can kind of see where I'm coming from when I say that we are all meaning-making things, and part of the condition that we find ourselves in life is that we are going to be interacting with other people. We come into this universe having relationships already pre-baked. We don't get to choose our siblings, our parents, the context in which we are born. If there is some kind of pre-existing soul lottery that we get dropped into, it's completely random as to what soul ends up in what body, and thereby what experience they will have going through life. But regardless of that randomness, everyone is going to have some kind of experience of family. That experience may be good, it may be bad, it could be loving, supportive, chill, and prosperous, or it could be chaotic and traumatic, terrible. People are going to experience found families, where separating from their biological family is the healthiest thing for their life, and come to find actual feelings of familial love through the relationships that they earn and develop over time. Other people, they're going to find that the way people treat them going through life, the people they meet, will be completely unpredictable, or to different extents immoral, trying to take advantage of you, get things from you, not care about you, and yet, despite all differences and disagreements, your biological family still chooses to love and support you, regardless of any incidental or social economic factors that surround you. Where a person partitions their personal values and beliefs with regards to family, I don't believe is owned by any particular school of philosophy. In that vein, I don't see the characters of Warframe being representative of different schools of philosophy or psychology either. I think we differ on this point. Because whereas I do see a lot of different cultural and philosophical inspirations going into the development of the plot and setting of Warframe, I think ultimately the value and the direction of the characters is guided more by the personal emotional experience of how one experiences the act of love, the emotional experience of love, and how it comes to represent different values to different people. So with each story update that we get, I think the driving idea is to explore different ways that people come to value or develop families, and what family means to the feeling and values of love and connection as human things. And I think that that is a theming that you can latch onto and understand whether or not you're an existentialist or in the family of philosophies of existentialists. Something that people like us have to keep in mind, people who are very much interested and invested in the practice of philosophy for its own sake and actually reading it as opposed to experiencing it as a collection of conversations happening through various art forms, which is the way most people end up engaging with philosophy or ideas, not through the scholarly practice of it, but through the arts and entertainment, and thereby experiencing the ideas of people creating those arts, even as those ideas are influenced by the history of the scholarship. And since the main way that people experience discussing and being in dialogue about ideas is through the arts, we have to remember that the vast majority of philosophy, despite the existentialists and the related philosophies there around, are actually essentialist philosophies. People believing that values are inherent in some way, whether that be by decision, by biology, by graces of God, by religions, whatever flavor of it is. Most people live life as though values are real, not the dynamic of the absurdist that recognizes they aren't despite being unable to stop attributing value to things and learning to be okay with that. And that ends up being a very significant difference because the vast majority of people are going to go through their lives trying to understand what the real values actually are and trying to align themselves with the values, as opposed to thinking that they are crafting and writing the values onto the world. And there's going to be wiggle room in that. People are going to see that some values they believe are inherent and shared universally, and they're going to think that other values are incidental, not really that big of a deal, not grand ideas. So it can be jotted down to preferences or circumstances. People are probably going to be more likely to say that love is inherently good or to kill is inherently bad, and those are universal values, than they would to say liking the flavor of chocolate is a universal value. People will probably be okay with saying, I like chocolate, but that's incidental and it doesn't matter. That's not the kind of value that they're thinking about when they're thinking about, do values exist in the world, and do I align myself with the real values of truth and goodness external to myself? Or do values exist inherently in the human creature that we should be conforming to, but because of our freedom and because of our potential, we also have the ability to not conform to the inherent values of the species. All that is to say, when we're talking about interpreting the arts through a philosophical lens, we have to remember that for the vast majority of people, engaging with philosophy is intuitive. It's vibes-based. It's about having conversations, but those conversations aren't directed or focused. There are no gamified rules of academia to limit the scope of conversations. They're freeform, flowing, constantly changing. Everyone is doing philosophy, but philosophy is an intuitive, non-specific practice. So when I see something like, say a game like Metaphor Fantasio or Nier Automata, where it is very explicit about its characters being about representations of different philosophical systems, and that those characters are then going to take actions and make decisions, and the story will be guided by those ideas, then you can kind of start to see that a different kind of dialogue or dialectical rigor is part of the point of that particular art piece, of that game, that movie, that show, etc. And so we can start to apply those rigors more specifically, trying to suss out. That means something different now, doesn't it? Screw it, I'm going to say it anyway, because that was part of my parlance growing up. Trying to suss out what those ideas are starts making a lot more sense for those particular stories. We see that happening in Warframe a lot of the time, but not, I think, as character archetypes most of the time. So, it's very easy to say, like, Parvos Granum, that's capitalism. He is the means by which the story critiques capitalism. Full stop, easy to acknowledge. Anyone who doesn't want to acknowledge it is purposefully disengaging from different parts of the story. But with a character like Teshin Dax, is he representing Bushido or Stoicism? It's unclear at different points. But he is a stern character who is a teacher and a guide who expresses beliefs about the benefits of being able to control your emotions, because that emotional control is a part of his backstory and his relationship with different people he considers family, with Varzia, with other Dax, with the Tenno. So his values of being able to emotionally regulate himself become important plot points only through understanding that that emotional regulation is the means to a greater value of caring about other characters in the setting as family, which means the specifics of the philosophy are interchangeable so long as the value is upheld. the character can grow and change and take on different ideas so long as the value of family is upheld. And that is why Teshin, as the emotional regulation character, ends up being the wise sage in the Duviri story arc, because that emotional regulation is necessary for the Drifter to be able to get out of Duviri. And that emotional regulation is then taken forward into the stories of 1999, where at first we learned to control and withhold the emotion so as to be able to overcome a toxic and harmful family dynamic for the Drifter's perspective. And then in 1999, the lesson is not emotional regulation, but emotional expression, how to form bonds and care about others so as to achieve some other goal, but ultimately that goal is, or becomes, forming the found family of the Hex, actually caring about them and loving them, which will then probably, in my prediction, lead into how we ultimately resolve our conflict with the Man in the Wall. It is going to be an expression of love and connection, and major story arcs from Whispers in the Wall to 1999 keep coming back to the point of that ability to express care being to strengthen the bonds of family. I hope by walking through Teshin's arc and how it's ultimately brought us to, or is going to bring us to, the conclusion of the Void War, in my opinion, can help you see where I'm coming from in terms of the philosophy of the story as a whole, and where it's going to end when Warframe is all concluded is not going to be a clear or specific philosophy. It is always going to come back to the assertion of the value of family and all the myriad forms that that can take for different people. I really appreciate this question. It really cut to the very heart of what I love about Warframe as a storytelling experience over all of these years, and the opportunities and the directions that we get to watch this story evolve into that wouldn't be possible if this wasn't a live service game that was running for as long as it is, or has been. So thank you very much for this question, Joel. I appreciate it so much. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm never going to make another prediction again. I'm all out of predictions. I'm burnt. That's it for this series, unless, of course, I decide to do another one.